Hey, greetings everybody. Keith here. Hoping everybody's having a good day, enjoying life, living life, loving life. Before we get started, I want to remind everybody, please hit that like, share, and subscribe button. There's PayPal links down in the chat or in the details section below for anybody who wants to share some love. And we're going to get into this on Sigil and the copyright notice. And we're going to go over Payne versus Massey and a definition in Black's Law Dictionary 4th. And hopefully clarify some things. And the first thing I'm going over is the sigil, the copyright sigil of my, or the copyright of my sigil. And that's here on Facebook. We're going to look at the chat section, my messenger, because if you look right here, you see there's my sigil, and then Alpha and Omega Church. Right hand side, you see my sigil there. And we're going to click on this. I'm going to show you a conversation I had with the Alpha Omega Church. And like I said, they've got my sigil up there. It says Alpha and Omega Church. And that's because this symbol here without the cross is the Alpha and the Omega combined. And then it's got a cross. See if I blow this up. There we go. So hopefully we should be able to see that. Yeah, we got good view on that. And what it says greetings. When I did a search on my image, which I do every so often, just like I do a call to the Treasury every 6 months or so, and down to local county commissioners every 6 months or so to check on debts and voter registration. I also do a check on my sigil every so often. And every once in a while I get somebody that's got it and they're using it. So I send them a little note. It says, greetings. First, we would like to say that we are seemingly on the same path of sharing the same message. It has recently been brought to our attention that you are using our copyright sigil. As we are a free education foundation, we have no commercial concerns. We only ask that you give proper credit to the source, the Keith Orland Little FBU, Faith-Based Union, as the origination is an extension of our original design on May 13th of 2020, starting with several symbols combined and a final result occurring on September 19th of 2020 in definitive paper form. It was then posted to our site in electronic format very shortly thereafter, as the electronic securities will show. Please see our site here. It's got the Faith-Based Union with my sigil. And you'll notice the sigil is a specific design. You'll notice down here at the bottom, the line is kind of thin, and then it gradually gets thicker at the top. So it's kind of distinctive. And then it says, hi, thanks for contacting us. And this is an automatic generation message. It says, hi, thanks for contacting us. We've received your message and appreciate you reaching out. We will get back to you as soon as possible. Now, this was this Saturday at 5:11 p.m. is when I sent this. And then this mail was generated immediately after, like I said, an automatic response. And then when I got up Saturday and checked, there was nothing. I got up Sunday and checked, there was nothing. And when I got up this morning, I checked, and I clicked on the link to find out if they'd done any more posting, because like I said, they share the same message. It's a church. and they're speaking about following Christ. So when I go over here and I click view profile, content isn't available right now. So they've changed their site. Now, I don't know if they went under a different name. So I'm going to have to do another sigil check to see if I find them there. But I just wanted to show you that the importance of giving notice. When people speak the truth, those that are being mischievous and devious run. Instead of confronting and coming into peace, they run. So even as a church, when they're found out using things that they're not supposed to, instead of just manning up and dealing with it and saying, okay, yeah, you're right, we'll give you credit. Instead of giving proper credit, they just quit using. That's the disturbing part. Because again, like I said, we don't have any commercial interest in the sigil. It's for free education. That's the symbolization is not so much the alpha omega of Christianity, but an alpha omega, and then I bear my cross within that structure of society. That's all it is. Let's take a look at Payne versus Massey now. This is a case that I went over the other day in regards to the video on travel rights. And I wanted to go over this one because it mentions something specific, some specific details that I want people to pay attention to as it relates to the travel rights and business licensing. This is an action brought by J.W. Payne and many others, owners of fleets of taxi cabs operating in the city of Houston, against Otis Massey, mayor of said city. Now, what we're talking about here, and I spoke on this before, is mayoral form of government. And we're going to see later in the documentation that's relating to a home rule. Home rule and mayoral form of government are the same thing. What they do is it's just generally holding your own authority to govern at the city level. Just like the county has authority to govern at their own level, at the county level. State has their own authority to operate their government at the state level. It's called home rule. Okay. And we'll get into that here a little bit. But it says chief of police and directors of utilities thereof in the city of Houston, also against Grover Sellers, Attorney General of the state of Texas. The purpose of the suit is to secure a declaratory judgment to have the rights, status, and other legal relations. Legal relations, those are the contracts between the plaintiffs and the defendant, City of Houston, and for injunctive relief to restrain the officers in said city from enforcing a city ordinance thereof regulating the operation of taxi cabs in that city. So what we're pointing out here is that the federal government regulates it, then the state regulates it, then the county regulates it, but at the local jurisdiction is where they have the power to regulate it. They're the ones that are dealing with the business entities directly, is at the local level. Okay. And especially that section of said ordinance, which requires that the plaintiffs pay to said city an annual street rental of $60 for each and every cab operated by him within said city. Annual street rental. So in other words, what's happening is the guy creates his own business and he has the right to use those roads as a private being to conduct his private affairs. And that means even his own private contracts. See, what happens with these kind of government situations is that they're violating and interfering with contract itself by operating as a third party intervener, saying they get to regulate those postal roads. Those postal roads are already regulated under Article 1, Section 8, Clause 7, and Clause 17 for postal roads and needful places and buildings along those postal roads. Those needful places and buildings along those postal roads are the very commercial entities allowed under Article 1, Section 8, Clause 1, 3, and 14. Congress shall lay and collect taxes, duties, and imposts, and the entities that are subject to them are the commercial 14th Amendment citizens, in other words, business entities. And for a city to turn around and add unlawfully, according to the Constitution, another levy, another licensure, it's duplicate licensing. See, it's just in a different form. And that's why it's a matter of the licensure and its validity. See, this is just another license fee upon a license fee upon a license fee upon. When is it going to stop? That's the whole problem. The trial court sustained exceptions to the petition and denied the permanent. They can't even spell permanent. Injunctive relief asked for. However, pending the appeal, a restraining order granted by the trial court when the suit was originally filed was continued in force until the final determination of the cause. The Court of Civil Appeals affirmed that judgment, and plaintiffs have brought error to the Supreme Court. The judgments of both courts are reversed, and the cause is remanded to the trial court for further proceedings not inconsistent with the opinion of that Supreme Court. It was error for the court to hold that the appellant Payne could not question the validity of an ordinance of the city of Houston regulating the use of public street. It was not, they're saying it was error for the court to hold that the appellant Payne could not question the validity. In other words, Houston was saying that there is no question to it. We have the ultimate right and power to levy that road, and they don't. It's already levied under Congress. And in order for them to maintain a municipal charter, they have to agree with that international charter, just like the United States. That's what the agreement with the Constitution and those state and federal statutes is all about. They're technically treaties in contract form. Because the petitioner in this action has no vested property right in the streets of the city of Houston, he has no right to maintain this action to restrain the enforcement of the ordinance requiring the payment of the street rental charge. He has every vested right in those streets. Because again, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 7 for postal roads, and Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, the needful places and buildings, for Article 1, Section 8, Clause 14, persons, under Article 1, Section 8, Clause 1 and 3, authorities of Congress's ability to lay and collect taxes, duties, and imposts and excises. A license is a licensure is a duty. It's an obligation. Those are already laid out in the Constitution. The municipality cannot enforce something that is already laid out by making something different and saying they're going to enforce that on top of it. Okay? He has no right to maintain his action to restrain the enforcement of the ordinance requiring the payment of the street rental charge. He does. He does have a right. because it's already laid out that that is a regulation held by a congressional body. Okay. Mr. Judge Foley delivered the opinion of the court. Foley. Wonderful. These people have such great names. This suit was filed by the petitioner J.W. Payne against the City of Houston and others to restrain the enforcement of a city ordinance regulating the operation of taxi cabs within the city limits of Houston, and for declaratory judgment fixing the rights, status, and other legal relations between the petitioner and the city. See, they're trying to force a contract when he's already involved in a private contract with other customers and such. And the city is trying to force another contract saying that he has to pay the city for the use of the roads. No, the federal taxes under his business license and the taxes that he pays for the on the gas already pays for those roads. The city does not have a power to regulate them in such a manner. Okay. Houston is a home rule city, duly incorporated, having their own contract with the government, and operating as such under the Constitution of the statutes of this state. Operating as such under the Constitution and statutes of this state. And what they're trying to do is say that, again, under Title 48 of the Code of Federal Regulations, 52.212-5, contract terms and conditions required to implement statutes or executive orders - commercial items, commercial services. So they've already implemented it as a municipality with the state by creating their own charter with the state. Now, if the business guy has his contract with the state already for that taxi cab company, then what's happening is the municipality is trying to interfere with his contract with the state by saying they have a contract with the state. They're different contracts. Stay out of each other's business. Petitioner alleged that for many years he had been engaged in the taxi cab business in Houston and had tendered the city the sum of $35 for a permit upon each taxi cab operated by him for the year 1945, which was required fee prior to the passage of the ordinance in controversy, but that the city had refused to accept the same and demanded on him an annual fee of $60 for each taxi cab, which charge was described in the ordinance as a street rental charge. They say renal charge. Again, these people don't know how to spell. Charge for the use of the public streets. At the time the suit was filed, the trial court issued a temporary restraining order against the city as prayed for by the petitioner. See, what happens in situations like this is when the states think that they can, or the governing bodies think that they can legislate new laws and raise fees and everything like that, what they're trying to do is legislate out the business guys that are in competition or seemingly cause them some kind of issue that really isn't an issue. Again, the $60 is for a rental charge for the streets, but those streets are already paid for, and no need for another rental charge is to be placed, particularly if it's not from the postal service, the post office, the exclusive jurisdiction. So what happens is they have local area-wide agreements and delegations of power that say, well, if it's not there, you can do this. But they're not doing that. They're not covering areas that aren't covered by the greater statutes and constitutions. They're covering the same issues and just raising the rates for their own municipalities. That's the fraud of it. And just like the home rule has your own self-governance power, which we'll read here, that's what the home rule literally means, is self-governance power. They're trying to say they have self-governing power to govern over you as a business entity because you're of a like kind, a business entity, allowed to self-govern. See the hypocrisy? Every business entity has a qualified home rule as a the power of self-governing. You get to write your own charters. You get to write your own contracts and stuff. That's what home rule means. You get to realize your own self-governing powers. By special exceptions, the city urged that it appeared from Payne's petition that he was not a licensee qualified to operate taxi cabs in the city of Houston, and therefore could not be heard to complain of the ordinance since he possessed no property right in the use of the streets in the conduct of his private business. See, he has a private business, and the city of Houston is trying to say because he's not licensed with the city, that he was not a licensee qualified to operate taxi cabs. Though he'd been doing it for years. Then all of a sudden, because they changed the ordinance, now he's not qualified. It doesn't make sense, does it? In the conduct of his private business. It's very distinct, folks. The trial court sustained these exceptions and denied permanent injunctive relief. However, pending the appeal, the original restraining order was continued in effect until the final determination of the cause. The Court of Civil Appeals affirmed the judgment of the trial court. The ordinance sought to be enjoined seeks to regulate the operation of taxi cabs in the city of Houston. It requires certain records to be kept and reports to be filed with the city council, and prohibits any change in rates without the written consent of the city council. It also requires the payment of an annual street rental charge of $60 for each taxi cab operated upon the streets of Houston. It makes it unlawful for anyone to drive or operate a taxi cab upon or over the streets of Houston unless such street rental charge has been paid thereon and a permit, certificate, or license issued thereon. So when you get a license at the state level and you pay that fee and you pay for gas and you pay for insurance, you're paying for all of the roads are already covered in those fees. The city, by tacking on these extra licenses, are only doing it as an investment. And they're doing it as an investment upon people that they think are dumb enough or themselves are dumb enough to believe that they can impose such a thing. And then the people that believe it fall victim to it. It further provides that the unearned portion of any and all license fees on all taxi cabs paid before the passage of the ordinance shall be deducted from the street rental charge due under the new ordinance. A fine of $200 is provided for each violation of any part of the ordinance. In addition thereto, the taxi cab operators' license certificate or permit may be suspended, revoked, or canceled by the Director of Utilities of the City of Houston. Director of Utilities. They're telling us something. I'll do some digging, that's for sure. There is nothing in the pleadings to indicate a situation comparable to that in Fleming versus Houston Light Company, where this court held that a municipality might lawfully impose a gross receipts tax against a public utility company as a charge for the use of the streets. In that case, there was a permanent occupation and appropriation of certain portions of the streets to the exclusion of the general public. which is not true here. That's at Article 1, Section 8, Clause 7, postal roads, and Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, needful places and buildings, and the appropriation of certain portions of the streets for the private use of those buildings. They are not parking lots. They are not streetways. They are driveways. You're not supposed to drive on driveways. You're supposed to park on driveways. And if you're parking on a driveway with no private business there, it might cause a problem. That's why they have those ordinances. Because now you pay for a certain portion of the street to the exclusion of the general public. You rented it. You paid the rental price for that portion of the street. And what they're trying to do here is say that taxi cabs use all of the streets, therefore they have to pay a rent on those certain portions. No, those certain portions are open to the general public already. Municipalities are creatures of our law. Municipalities are creatures of our law and created as political subdivisions of the state as a convenient agency for the exercise of such powers as are conferred upon them by the state. So the state confers all the powers that the state has to the municipality, which is a grant. A conference of powers is a grant of power. So the state is the grantee, and the municipality is what then? The trustee. That leaves the people that live in that community as beneficiaries once again. Comprehend trust law. They represent no sovereignty distinct from the state and possess only such powers and privileges as have been expressly or impliedly conferred upon them. All acts done by them must find authority in the law of their creation. They must find authority in the law of their creation. The state created their grants of powers for general use at municipal levels. Just like it says here, they are creatures of our law and are created as political subdivisions of the state. Period. I want to take a moment to remind everybody to please hit that like, share, and subscribe button. There are PayPal links in the details section below for anybody who wants to share some love. All is appreciated. Yeah, let me grab those links for the YouTube channels for everybody. And we've got Freedom Fighter is saying they deleted his stuff, so I'll pull those up real quick, drop those, and continue on. In the meantime, I'm going to drop the stream link in case anybody wants to jump up on panel. Here is the link for El Perro. Here is the link for Hecklebus. And then the other link, you should be able to just look up Keith Little, AEITHLITTLE, and it should pop up. And let's continue on. It is well settled as a general rule that municipalities have the power to regulate the use of their streets and may enact valid rules and regulations for the government of motor vehicles within their borders, so long as they are not in conflict with or repugnant to legislative enactments governing the use of such vehicles. Again, Article 1, Section 8, Clauses 1, 3, 7, 14, and 17, as it relates to commercial use of the postal roads to get to and from needful place in building to another needful place in building for commercial purposes. But that such ordinances are invalid if they are in conflict with statutes relating to this subject. Contract terms and conditions required to implement statutes or executive orders hyphen commercial items, commercial services. So if the municipality has a contract with the state and that business owner has a contract with the state, the municipality cannot interfere with the business contract license unless they sit down in arbitration with the state to discern whether that municipal license enforcement is valid. He does have a vested interest. He has an equal station vested interest in the use of the roads and the regulation thereon of his own business as a private being, not a political subdivision. There's no doubt that under sections 12, 20, and 21 of Article 1175 VACS, the City of Houston is authorized to regulate, license, and fix charges or fares to be made by any person owning, operating, or controlling any vehicle of any character used for the carrying of passengers for hire or the transportation of freight for hire on the public streets of the city. But in view of the provisions of Article 6698 VACS, the power of the municipality to license motor vehicles does not include the authority to charge a fee for that license. Does not include the authority to charge a fee for that license. The power of the municipality to license motor vehicles does not include the authority to charge a fee for that license, because the federal taxes are already appropriated. The rental fees are already appropriated. They have already been assessed and authorized. You cannot come in and double dip like the City of Houston is trying to do in this case. A license is merely a permit or privilege to do what otherwise would be unlawful. How many times have you heard that? This is in case law several places. A license is merely a permit or privilege to do what otherwise would be unlawful. And you pay a fee for that license. You don't pay an extended fee for the use of the car per car. The object of the license is to confer a right or power which does not exist without it. So, the state confers the power to the municipality, and the municipality confers a right or power which does not exist without it through that license. So the state grants the power of the municipality to license, yet you're already licensed through the state for both the automobile as a motor vehicle and for a business. So what is the license with the municipality? A license fee is the sum extracted for the privilege of carrying on a particular occupation or business, and it may be imposed either for regulation under the police power or for revenue, or for both regulation and revenue. See, the City of Houston has the power to regulate it under police power, but not for revenue. because the revenue is reserved to the state in its licensing to begin with. Next one, Article 6698 is part of Section 2 of Title 116, Chapter 1 VACS, dealing with the regulation and registration of motor vehicles. Under such title, the state exacts license or registration fee, which is a privilege tax in the nature of a license or toll for the use of highways of this state. It's already been paid to the state. Flashfield Encyclopedia of Automobile Law and Practice, Volume 1, Sections 212, 213, 214. Article 6698 provides that license fees and certificates of registration required by the state shall be in lieu of all similar registrations, and that no such registration fees or other like burdens shall be required by or required of the owner of any motor vehicle of any county, municipality, or other subdivision of the state. It further provides that such provision shall not affect the right of the incorporated cities and towns to license and regulate the use of motor vehicles for hire in such corporations, but nothing therein anywise authorize any county or city to levy and collect any occupation tax or license fee on motorcycles, motor vehicles, or motor trucks. That statute was enacted in 1917. Prior to its passage, it was held that a municipality, under its police authority, might exact fees looking to regulation of motor vehicles. Such fees being designed to reimburse the municipality for the cost of maintaining its regulation under its police powers. Period. And when we think about those police powers, again, I remind you, Article 10 of Libre Code, General Orders 100. Martial law chiefly affects the police and the collection of public taxes, revenue, and charges for the expelled government or the invading forces, its army, its use, the safety of its army, and the safety of its operations. That's your police power. It's martial law. That's why when you go into those courts, you see that flag in the corner, and it's an admiralty flag with a military gold fringe. That's a martial law court. That judge is acting in the office of military administration. So let's look at the home rule under Black's Law Fourth. Black's Law Fourth home rule definition specific in constitutional and statutory law. Constitutional and statutory law. Local self-government or the right thereof. Attorney General versus Lowry. In British politics, political subdivisioning, a program or plan, or a more or less definitely formulated demand for the right of local self-government for Ireland under the lead of an Irish national parliament. Constitutional and statutory law. So it's still a British political law system. Constitutional and statutory law that confers political subdivisions. See, the government of the United States is a federal government. It's not a political subdivision. The states, their conferred powers constitutionally, creating political subdivisions. Those states confer powers to the municipalities and counties, creating further political subdivisions. That's all this stuff is, folks. Just like Payne versus Massey says, you have the right to be self-governing without the enforcement of licensing fees by the municipality. They have the authority of the enforcement of police powers, but not charging fines, fees, and penalties and such. Greetings at the fallen. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. I have a question. I was just listening. I made it all the way to the end. I had some other questions, but when you claim that the federal government, or just your statement, not your claim, was that it wasn't a political subdivision, how is that possible when you also speak of it being a subdivision of the International Postal Union?
There's all kinds of overlay territorial jurisdictions. What happens is you've got postal roads, and because the Postal Service can't regulate every last bit of it, and there are, in fact, police powers delegated to the municipalities, what they do is they have interlocal agreements with the police powers to extend their exclusive jurisdiction. Now, that exclusive jurisdiction allows for them, under the postal rule, to allow for multiple jurisdictions to exist at one time, and they can shop for that form that they think is best suited for any claim that they bring.
So how does that keep the federal government separate than a political subdivision?
Because the federal government means all entities of the government of the United States, including the United States Postal Service and the Postal Regulatory Commission. Those are military regulation forms, not political. It's for
Oh, so
commercial
the
purposes.
difference, I get it.
It's for commercial purposes, but the political subdivisions are not. Political subdivisions are for regulation according to democracy.
And the other regulation is for basically a military, like you said, a
Correct.
martial law.
Correct.
But okay, so yeah, it's just confusing because then it's like, how in your mind, I mean, you seem to have done it by just the way you explained it to me, but is there like a simpler purpose one could think of that could understand that separation when you're moving forward in, let's say, conducting your your journal or your life? How could you like distinguish that with your mind of understanding that separation?
I use Psalms 121 verse 8. The Lord is my one. The Lord is the one that preserves my going out and coming in from this time forth and forevermore. He's my witness, and I'm a second witness, and we are both witnesses to the name of Jesus Christ that is written in the Scriptures. And though it be hearsay, it is a greater hearsay than any statute, code, rule, or regulation that these people come up with.
Okay.
And
I'll work
they
on
have to
that one
agree
because
with it.
that's
They
what?
have to agree with it because the foundation of the law of this land, the supreme law of the land, is the Scripture, and that's that Constitution that confers that self-governing power.
Right. Okay. Because I was trying to like to stick with the road deal because I was trying to think of like the main purpose in what this teaching was today about the right or rule to tax. I mean, basically, that's what it seems like to me. Somebody's claiming their right to tax you for what their belief in their
Correct.
power in the and whether or not that's a corporation or whether or not that's a military power or how they use the standing army to the point of if it's a postal road in the International Postal Union, is then when people talk about decentralization, it I'm trying to figure out in that aspect too of how is it not already they brought their own decentralization is already brought forward that this is
Well,
actually a
and that's why I say it's important to learn how to contract, because despite what you think, I urge everybody to listen up and listen up close. I really do, because despite what you think, the system that they're developing is allowing us a greater convenience, and therefore releasing of us of greater liabilities. And the way I explain this is that back in the day, if you wanted to move, you picked up all of your belongings. You even had to might buy some carriages to move your belongings, because back in the day you usually only rode on a horse or in a small carriage. But if you planned to get up and move, you had to, there was some expense to it, and lo and behold, you might get robbed along the road, this or that. So they made a monetary system. Instead of carrying all your wealth with you, you carry a couple pieces of paper that developed into bonds and stuff like that. And you could send them through the mail, and they'd be at another place waiting for you when you got there. You could sell off all your things, turn them into bonds, send them by mail. Wells Fargo, a protected carrier, to your future destination. Get there, open it up, issue it to a bank, have all your assets set up, and then collateralize them into your actual physical property again. Today, we have this convenient thing where we can negotiate every time we turn around. We don't need documentation. We don't need coins in our pocket. We don't need assets, nothing. That's why I try to convince you guys to really learn this stuff and learn how to just coin your words or purse your lips. Everything's already provided. You shouldn't need, or there is no thing in my life where I want for anything. I've got all these things, and they're nice and they're convenient, but I don't need them. And I can certainly live without them. Even if this internet went down, like they were talking about on the 4th, oh my God, they're going to do an emergency alert and everything is going to go blackout. The insanity is just so abounding, it's pathetic. And so I'm urging you to realize that your true power today, in the way they're legislating these laws, they're telling you, just learn how to negotiate. That's it. Today's legal tender is known as negotiable instruments. So coin your words or purse your lips. Make your voice sing instrumentally in the negotiations. Paul reminded me of it again yesterday when I was on his panel yelling at Flow State. I don't need to yell. I don't need to defend the truth. I don't need to be offensive to anybody calling them names and getting loud and trying to talk over them as they try to talk over me. I just have to enhance my powers of negotiation. And those that will see that I'm speaking the truth will be heard. They'll hear it, and they'll come see. So again, I urge, do your research so quit believing the bullshit and come to the comprehension that you have that self-governing power. And that self-governing power is in how you act and how you speak. Pure and simple.
So if I asked you why do you think in your in what you said about why would they transfer a treaty into a contract when you said, see, they've taken a
Well,
treaty and they brought it forward into a contract. Why
well,
would they do that?
contracts. Well, contracts are by essence treaties. They're peace agreements to conduct affairs together for the good of each other. That's the basics of a treaty. That's what you negotiate. Because otherwise, the city of Houston is going to come after you and fine you for $200 for not agreeing with them. Well, again, there are certain clauses that you can agree with, and there are clauses that you don't have to agree with. But the thing is, coming to a treaty, coming to peace, saying, okay, because again, The city may have a contract with the state or a conference of powers granted from the state, but that doesn't give them the power to interfere with another contract they have with a private being. They're already holding a contract with that private being through the licensure through the state.
Right. I think that,
Municipality, that would
right. I
be
was,
insane for the state to confer upon the municipality the ability to interfere with the state business that's already established. That's insane. I don't see where these municipal leaders get that concept.
but they had the concept. I mean, the part that made it like profane to me or a profanity was that they had the concept within themselves to claim that it was irrefutable, that they got to do it and nobody could come back and say it was wrong. I mean,
Well,
that's how far they.
and that's their misunderstanding of that home rule. You don't have the unlimited power to self-govern by governing the people in the local community that already have a license from the very people that granted you the power of self-governing. That's the that's that's biting the hand that feeds you.
So where else do you
So
find that in like life or reality today? Where do you see that in like life, or where have you came across it that you're reading it that we would see
everywhere,
it?
everywhere. You go to the hospital, that's a sales agreement. You go to school, you sign up and register your kid, that's a sales agreement. Those are all contracts. Every last one of them is a
But they're
contract.
private. They'd be just like that taxi cab guy. They get to do
Exactly.
that.
Exactly. They get to do that with you, but they don't get to charge you if the state has already charged you. They don't get to demand of you insurance if the state has already demanded you insurance. The insurance is already there. How does a hospital demand that you make payment if the insurance is already there? By
So what
making
you're
a sales agreement.
okay, so what you would say is that this would actually, I mean, in the right circumstances, you could protect yourself from that cab driver. Even though he's filing and claiming you can't charge me rent for the street, if he started some way within his fare, charged you for him having to rent the street, would be a fraudulent case in itself.
Correct. Correct. He can charge me to pay him compensation for his service, but he can't charge me like the utility companies do as a second billing and defer the payment of his own obligation onto the customer. Can't do that. That's what the utility companies are all doing. They've got call up and ask the utility commissioner for the first and second billing parties. Maybe you didn't know there's two billing parties and that the landlord is the first billing party. And what he did was he told you that you were going to be responsible for paying the utilities. And that was a deferring of his responsibility to pay the utilities. And you coincidentally agreed to it. Oops.
Right. So that's why people would say your utilities are included because they just raise your rent.
Right.
So
Yeah,
he's
well,
really
it
getting
doesn't
you to
matter.
pay it
It
anyway.
doesn't matter. The utility company has already paid. It has nothing to do with the landlord. The utility company has already paid. And they're to extend the service as a credit factor to those who deserve it, the people that allow them through gross domestic product to operate in such a capacity.
Okay, that's like foreign to me right there. The gross domestic product allows them in that capacity. I mean, like in
All of our
layman's
sweat
terms.
equity, all of our sweat equity is what builds this nation. This nation didn't build itself. The government didn't build itself. The government and this nation and every nation around the world was built by the sweat equity of the people. I don't care if it's a little hut or a huge community of concrete. It was sweat equity of the people. No one technically has a right to charge for any of it. The commercial system is merely for regulation and enforcement so they can sustain that community, so that it doesn't go by the wayside as a little village that developed and then dispersed and moved on to somewhere else. That's what society is developing, is stationary scabs on Earth. And in order to qualify them to be maintained, the original source of these communities was commercial centers in one spot. And then you had an agricultural area around them. And then outside of that agricultural area was the sojourn area of all the foreign travelers going from community to community. And they would bring their foreign wares to this community, and they would trade some of those foreign wares for wares from this community and then travel on. And now they would have foreign wares of their own from their own community, and foreign wares from this community, and foreign wares from this community. And they just kept traveling around. But there had to be commercial centers for transferring those foreign products. That's all it is taking foreign products out of the area and taking them somewhere else. That's a convenience. That's a want and a desire. That's an abundance. Because if the people in the area actually needed them, they wouldn't sell them off. So everything commercial is a convenience. It's a desire. Nothing more than greed. It's all this glitter and gold and all the pretty colors and things that make you feel good. Life isn't supposed to be like that. We only do it that, we only provide that because that's what we want.
Right, because I mean that would go to like the local level of, like, just in my mind was coming up, a flea market, because not everybody locally is able to like farm. People don't have that property, so that abundance of that farm brings that to market to the other people, which isn't really. I mean, I want us to agree to a point. It's a luxury, but it's not. It comes about by necessity also, that there's other people in that local place that as a necessity for those goods.
Right, but what happens is people forget about paying homage to the Mother Earth, and that's that 7-year Sabbath and following that cycle, so that we end up with store after store after store after store after store, year after year after year. And really, what we should be doing is, if we end up with a store uh, and end up having so much excess that we have to sell some off. See, that's what it is. You shouldn't produce so much that you sell it off and make a profit simply to make a profit every year. You should make enough for your own subsistence. If you end up having an abundance for some reason, then you can put it in store. If you have so much abundance that for some reason you have to sell it off, then the next year you should use up your stores and drop your production. See, today's marketing scheme, as it relates to production, is that they amp up the production every year so they can make more and more profits every year. That's greed and gluttony. That's the corporate entity in our
and that
national.
causes and that causes harm. I mean, in the long run,
Right.
what you're claiming is or was saying is that in greed, and understanding that that's greed, not just profit for being
Right.
intelligent or using your stuff right. It's somewhere causing harm, and if you don't
Right.
realize it, in 7 years, it's liable to bite you. Also, it's liable to cause
Absolutely.
you.
Absolutely. And Moonbug puts down REITM MBS securitization is fraud. Mortgage-backed securities of a real estate investment trust, and that's that Postal Road. That Postal Road is a mortgage-backed security in the Postal Realty Trust Inc. They're the ones that hold the real estate investment company, the Postal Service. Believe it or not, look it up. Postal Realty Trust Inc. SEC filings. And yes, it is a hypothecation of customer securities by using the legal name for the addressing purpose in a national format. The legal name is the trustee, and then there's that street name with its bonding number. And it expresses the trust that you're operating in. And that's the real estate investment trust. And you're acting as the trustee, performing the functions of public office, doing everything publicly, giving out that legal name in every public venue they ask you for. And every last one of them, the contract to buy or sell. And therefore, you're allowed to give a number in lieu of the name and address. But they convinced you to give that name and address so that they can hypothecate the customer's security and make it their own. It's a sick game, but that's the way it works. And like I said earlier in the stream, it's not until you learn how to negotiate that you're going to be able to see this stuff, and that's because you got to do your research. Then you'll be able to negotiate through this stuff. Pure and simple. And like I said, it's a lot of research, and I've done a lot of it. You know, that issue with flow state yesterday, and that the prepaid postal indicia is what I'm going to call it. He wants to call it franking privilege and all this and that, and those are viable terms, but specifically it's prepaid postage indicia, because you can do it either by hand and just write it on the damn envelope. You can make a stamp, a rubber stamper, so you can rubber ink stamp it on the envelope, or you can even make self-affixed or self-adhesive stamps that you can affix to them, or you can even make regular stamps that you got to actually look the back of them just like a regular stamp. I don't care. It's prepaid postage indicia. In other words, it's indicative. It's an indication that the postage is already prepaid. Something like tax per Q, yes. And it relates to that general ledger where the enumeration at birth creates an account, and on that account, the opening of the burial trust or the construction of a burial trust through the enumeration at birth, and then the spendthrift trust at the SS5 application signing and sending in, those two trusts. And then, of course, you get that Social Security card. And as a holder of that instrument, you're now obligated. Whereas if you just don't get that card and you just learn how to use that number in lieu of the name and address, you don't ever give them an address. If they require an address, it's the Social Security office. They're the ones holding all the records. They're the ones that'll clarify the home rule. They're the ones that'll clarify the licenses, registration, and all that. Hey, how you doing, Crazy Horse? Good to see you. Good to see you. So anyway, we're gonna shut her down here. I hope everybody comprehends what we went over today, and if you need to listen to it again, the home rule is just a matter of self-governing, and that is a grant to the municipalities so that they can issue those bonds in a commercial system. That's the only conference of governmental powers they have, is commercial powers as a political subdivision. That's it. They don't have any power to govern over you as the living being. They have governing powers to regulate police powers and corporate powers as they are concerned with business partners, not private business people conducting their own affairs. All them taxes and everything for the roads, they've already been paid. They've already been delegated through certain governing powers, and that's Congress. Congress shall lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises. And when it comes to those imposts, they also regulate Article 1, Section 8, Clause 7 postal roads, and the needful places and buildings under Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17 along those postal roads. Not on those postal roads, but along those postal roads. And then along those postal roads, they have an extension of a driveway that they're given access to for private use. That's it.
Why do you think they messed that word up? I mean, or is it messed up that when you say you're not allowed to drive on a driveway, you're allowed to park, but on a driveway, but what makes the parkway then different when you come across the parkway? I mean, are
Because the
those
parkway,
legal?
well, yeah, the parkway is just um, a way of describing a street. As you go along your way, you can see people parked. It's a parkway. So it's the same thing as a street. A driveway is not. A driveway is a place where you park once you're done driving along your way. See,
So, okay,
this
a
English language,
driveway just removes you from the street, basically.
correct.
Okay, because yeah, I was just trying to figure out why isn't a driveway a place you drive? That's where you're driving, which would be like the street.
But you're not driving commercially on your own property, are you?
Right. That's why it was
Once you
tripping me
leave your
calling it a driveway.
right when you leave your property, if you're driving, you're no longer driving on private property, you're driving on public postal road. And that's who gets to regulate it. Postal Congress, not Congress. See, even that the delegation of Congress to lay and collect taxes, duties, and imposts, that's a conference of power from the Constitution of the Universal Postal, which the United States is a party to through their charter at the UN. It's all commercial, every last bit of it. The Lord shall preserve thy going out and thy coming in from this time forth and even forevermore. And there's no scripture that says he charges for it. So when the postal union and everybody else seems to think that they can put paved roads over top of his land, which shall not be sold forever, and then start charging people for it, they've mistaken the word of God and that we are strangers and sojourners with him. See, the story is that Satan picked up a handful of dust from the ground and looked God in the eye and said, I'm going to create my own army. God said, that's my dust. See, everything they make is from the dust of the ground, is from things that God created. They have no authority to charge somebody else for its use. None. But granted, I'm willing to help keep that road up at my own expense and at my own convenience. But you don't get to make this conglomerate of roads all around the world and then charge everybody for their use, specifically because you went out of range and overboard and scabbed up the earth. You can pay for your deeds. I'm not paying for them. Me,
So,
I can travel on foot. Me, I can travel without the convenience of automobiles. Granted, it is a nice convenience, but even in my own issue, I haven't gotten another car since I had to sell off mine. One day I might, but I guarantee you it won't be because I buy it. It'll only be because I want one for convenience. Go ahead.
right. So, like, toll roads are kind of like, I don't want to say this, like, overburden this word, but it's almost like an abomination of the ground, the toll road, to build that road over the ground and then claim that nobody can use that without paying that fee that they want to charge you to drive over that road, right?
Correct. Yeah, and that's bullshit. I don't pay them. I got a guy over in Pennsylvania. He drives those roads all the time. He doesn't pay them. He lets them send tickets and then rebuts them. Haven't got a dime from him yet. So anyway, folks, we're done. If you got any final words to follow, please do so. Otherwise, we're gonna scoot out of here. I got other things I gotta go do, and of course, more research always.
Thank you.
Killer, killer. Appreciate it. And with that, folks, please hit that like, share, and subscribe button on your way out. There are PayPal links in the detail section below for anybody who wants to share some love. Every little bit is appreciated. And we'll be back again some other time with more for you. So in the meantime, know that I love you. I don't give a rat's ass whether you love me back or not. May God bless you and have a good day.